so let's go. Sweet 16. Baylor season's over. KU over. That was a shock a little bit on Saturday. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, your thoughts about the Sweet 16?
Yeah, Baylor from the jump really just didn't seem like that was a great matchup for them. I do think, though, that, when you rely on high percentage shooting and you're not getting it, then they're not going to win many games. And Creighton hit 80 before they did, and that's been their MO all year. When they lose, they give up about 80 points. Or they're under 80. And every time they did, they were. So I think that, this Baylor team was a bunch of really good players. I just think that maybe it was, looking back on it, Jack and I and Garrett were talking about this before the show, it just wasn't the right mix that they needed. Like, you could take maybe 3 or 4 of those guys and put them on different Baylor teams and they would fit, but not maybe all together. And so at least as far as, reaching the plateaus that people expect Baylor to reach now, Kansas was shocking, especially since they had Arkansas on the ropes in the middle of the second half. And then just Arkansas, nibbled away, but got back and won that game.
That's what they play. Arkansas plays like their coach, emotional, up and down, a roller coaster, but they were better than Kansas when it mattered down the stretch in that game. Craig?
Credit to Arkansas. The SEC has, I think, an opportunity for bragging rights at the end of this entire thing. I think the Big 12, a lot of people poking at the, best conference tag or the toughest conference or whatever. I think it's much more the toughest conference than probably the best conference. I think that's the way it's played out because I don't think you can deny the 1 through 10 how difficult that was for teams. But could it have happened and been even more close because there aren't necessarily a couple of super elite teams as opposed to the SEC where maybe it's not as thorough from top to bottom, but they have 2 or 3 that are really good as opposed to just pretty good, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think we're starting to see that maybe bear out a little bit as far as the storylines go. And Arkansas is a really fun, athletic, good team. It's kind of hard to watch. Was it Anthony Black, knowing that, Baylor recruited him. He was a legacy guy. And, certainly to see Arkansas keep moving on and
a team Baylor beat.
And a team that Baylor beat. And then also to see a guy, obviously they wanted, but good for him, good for his family, and good for the Razorbacks. But, yeah, the SEC has looked really good with their team still remaining. And, the Big East obviously has made a dent as well. And, the Big 12 is, just hanging on right now with K-State and Texas. Maybe not what was expected, but certainly those two teams have carried the banner well. Awesome to see Tang get in the Sweet 16, and Texas might go win this whole dang thing. They really are stinking good. So that's entirely possible. So we'll see, because you might only have 2 in the Sweet 16, but you might have the one that's standing tall at the very end, and that's ultimately what matters and what people will remember. As far as Baylor goes, I don't think anybody who was paying attention was all that shocked by them bowing out in the round of 32. We knew that getting to the Sweet 16 would be a tough task because of the way the bracket laid out, and knowing that Creighton wasn't necessarily a game, despite being a lower seed, that you were going to be favored in. And sure enough, I don't think most people had them favored by the time that game rolled around. And I think that was evident pretty much wherever you looked, from prognosticators, from odds to whatever, just the feel. I think after that first round win over UC Santa Barbara, you just didn't feel like this was going to be a team that was always going to just be, finding horseshoes on their path, and that, all along this was a team that if they weren't shooting well and they were playing their typical defense, it was going to be hard to win games. And they got not only a double bad break on the shooting, but they played bad defense. And on the offensive side with that double bad break, they couldn't make a shot and Creighton couldn't miss a shot. That's a triple whammy. No defense, no points, and the other team can't miss. And you are where you are right now, which is already back in Waco, and now trying to figure out how you move forward, knowing full well that Keontae George and Adam Flagler and there's others to be determined, and those guys are still unofficial, but I feel confident in saying Keontae George will be in the NBA next year. But now you turn your eyes towards next year, and it's going to be a very interesting offseason.
Yeah, and Keontae, if he plays like he did the last few games, which was not at an elite level. The G League, I'm not saying that flippantly. That's hard. We've seen great guards from Baylor. Where's Maceo Teague right now? Hell of a player. Jared Butler signed late in the NBA season. Obviously, Davion Mitchell continues to play well. And those were 3 great college guards. They were with Maceo Teague, Davion Mitchell, and also Jared Butler. Now, here is audio. Now, let's first go to the Sweet 16 graphic, Garrett. These are the teams left in the Sweet 16 and their records against whoever's left in the Sweet 16. Down at the bottom, Sean Farnham, by the way, Florida Atlantic, UCLA, and Miami have not played against anyone that's still left among the 16.
Or Princeton.
Oh, Princeton. Tennessee unbeaten. Gonzaga 3-1. Xavier and Texas are about to meet. That could be just as good as it gets. Alabama played 7 games against those who were left. Kansas State, there you see the list on down. Creighton 3-4. Houston has not played but 1 game against those inside the top or Sweet 16. And Michigan State 0-2, but Izzo's got them playing. And Izzo and Kansas State, Michigan State coming up in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I'm actually Kansas State, Michigan State might be the game I'm looking forward to the most. I'm very curious about that, especially like when you've got a new head coach in Jerome Tang playing a legend in Tom Izzo, and he just took one down in John Calipari. In what I thought, especially the last 3 minutes of that game, Kansas State was able to put some distance between it, where Kentucky was, kind of playing a little desperate, which, you don't see from Kentucky teams all that often, but they were, the last couple minutes, playing a little bit desperate, and Marquise Noel was so fantastic.
You mean the little kid?
The little guy? The little guy?
Little guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another thing, and I just saw Jerome Dowling firing off a tweet at John Calipari for what he said in the post game, and was he being disrespectful? Perhaps he should know Noel's name, you would think, but a lot of K-State fans are not happy about that.
The back of his jersey ran past you a crap ton there, bunch. John. So you might.
And he was also the one with the ball in his hands
Yeah.
for about 85% of the possession for Kansas State.
Yeah, and really all I've seen was Kentucky fans upset about Jerome Tang not bowing down and kissing the ring of Calipari and the Wildcats, blue blood history. But I think that that's one of those where you look at it the way you want to look at it. They definitely blew Tang's comments out of proportion. If you want to look at Calipari's comments and take those a certain way, that's fine too. But final score is all that matters, and that's something that was in K-State's favor. So congrats to the Cats.
Here is Jerome Tang. This was after the game. Responded. This is Kellis Robinette. He covers K-State. When he was asked about beating a traditional power like Kentucky, tradition does not help you if you don't get out on the floor and play with dudes. We have had more dudes than they did today. That's what that was. He also then referred to the fact that blue blood and K-State's got their history, and everyone melted down if you're a Kentucky fan. But here's a John Calipari stat. The guy's a hell of a coach. John Calipari and Kentucky have one NCAA tournament win in the last 3 years, which for most programs would be just fine. Since 2015 in the Final Four, 10 tournament wins, 7 complete seasons, 2 Elite Eights, 3 first weekend exits, and 1 missed tournament. Now, a lot of success in there, but the other part about being Kentucky or Kansas or even Duke or North Carolina, and things do change up and down, that is not what he's getting that kind of money for. I like him. I do. But there is a little bit of doubt. I mean, Bill Self, who was, hospitalized, there are those who, what the hell? I mean, why'd you have to do that right before the tournament? And I mean, just watching a little bit of that. I mean, the guy was hospitalized and was in a condition where he couldn't coach. He obviously wishes he could have been there for the Jayhawks. Yeah,
I mean, that mattered. I mean, that definitely mattered. You don't have your head coach. I mean, he's a legend and a Hall of Famer for a reason. And I think that maybe this is, I don't know of many other examples of guys missing time. I don't know. There's probably, pockets here and there where a legendary coach had a health issue to take care of, but I don't know. I don't recall it to this extent, this timing-wise, in March Madness with Bill Self, and that certainly hurt Kansas, no doubt about it. But, what a showing from, the other half of the Sunflower State with Tang and company, and what a run it's been to get in the Sweet 16 in year number 1.
All right, now, Keontae George walks off the court after the loss to Creighton. Everyone knows that most likely a one-and-done, and most likely would be drafted at lottery or in that neighborhood. Here is Keontae. This is audio from Darby Brown from KWTX after the game.
Keontae, walking off the court, you're walking with Coach Brooks. Just what was going through your mind?
Coach AB, he recruited me since I was 12. And, just to have not a lot of players can have a type of relationship with an assistant coach. And, we had our ups and downs, but, in the end, it was all for the greater good. So, like I said before, I could have took the blue blood route. But, I decided to come here in a small city in Waco and, kind of grind it out the whole year. And, because of, Coach AB, he was, he tested me each and every day. And, it's just, not a lot of programs have, that type of thing going around. So, I'm just blessed that I was able to, make this type of decision to have that relationship, with Coach AB.
Now, there was part of what Keontae said also was the fact that he could have gone to a blue blood, but he went to Baylor. And a lot of people took that as an insult because of Baylor winning the national title a couple of years ago. I think everyone, in my opinion, is a little bit sensitive to that. I understand how good Baylor's been for the last decade or so. Chuck Cooperstein responded on my timeline by saying the difference is that Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, and maybe one or two others have done this for 45 or 50 years, and somebody responded to that. Nobody cares about that anymore. Everybody cares about who you are now. The NIL money changes all of that, but it was just a good back and forth discussion. Bottom line is Keontae George came to Baylor because currently they're among the best programs despite the loss to Creighton on Sunday night.
Before we get a guest on, I'll explain it this way. So Baylor, when it comes to basketball success, and really football too, when they have it, they are new money, which is fine. Money's money, but there is old money, and that's what Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, UCLA, they're old generational wealth. You can you can take that, if you were looking at people who were wealthy, you could take it back to the Vanderbilts or something. They're Mark Cuban. They made their own billions. And old money doesn't understand new money or like it, and new money vice versa, but you're new money. And just because you are, and it's not bad, but you're not old money yet.
Yeah, or the term or whatever, blue blood. We have a couple of other college basketball notes to get to, and then Andy Zimbalist is our guest coming up here in just a second.
One of the dumbest things people could possibly start to try to pick apart, honestly. I mean, he's sitting there clearly crying, trying to hold it together. He's, 18 years old, give or take, and they just lost a tough basketball game. I mean, whatever he said, it was not anything to really be up in arms about, but, I mean, God forbid the internet not, have something to get even more upset about. I just nothing harmful there at all.
Rick Pitino to St. John's. Ed Cooley headed to Georgetown. Those are a couple of the other basketball stories, of course, of interest. And even saw a note with Mike Bray might be getting back into coaching at USF with the Bulls. We're now joined by Andy Zimbalist.